On a scorching summer morning in Portland, sunlight spilled across the city like molten gold. Patrol cars glided in and out of the precinct, officers laughing, relaxed. Another predictable day. Bright, warm, almost peaceful. No one sensed the horror already falling from the sky. That peace shattered when Officer Michael Harris sprinted into the station, breath ragged, uniform torn, his arms shaking as he carried two police dogs, Ranger and Max, both legendary German Shepherd K9s of the department. They weren't moving. Ranger's breaths were shallow. Max's paws hung limp. Conversations died instantly. Pens dropped. These weren't just police dogs. They were protectors, partners, family. Within minutes, all three were rushed into the bright summer-lit emergency wing of Brightview Medical and K9 Trauma Unit, sunlight pouring through the tall windows as if refusing to let the moment darken. A doctor stepped forward, face tightening as he scanned the injuries. "They fell from this height?" he whispered. "No dog survives that. We may be too late." As the trauma team prepared sedation and the syringe for end-of-life protocol, Ranger suddenly stirred, weak, trembling, and lifted his paw, pressing it desperately against Michael's chest. Gasps filled the room. Even the toughest officers felt their throats tighten. And that was when Dr. Collins froze mid-movement, eyes narrowing, realizing something was terribly wrong, and not in the way anyone expected. What he discovered under the blazing summer sun shocked the entire department. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support carries these stories farther than we ever imagined. Portland had a way of glowing in summer, the kind of glow that softened even its sharpest edges. That morning, sunlight spilled over the Willamette River like polished brass, refracting through the thin veil of heat that rose off the streets and drifted lazily into the sky. The city buzzed with the relaxed rhythm of a warm season, bikers cruising across bridges, cafes spilling customers onto sidewalks, the lazy hum of distant traffic weaving between neighborhoods. But as one traveled northwest toward Forest Park, the mood shifted. The dense, towering canopy swallowed the urban brightness and replaced it with a cooler, deeper shade of green, though even here shafts of golden summer light pierced through the leaves like searching fingers. Officer Michael Harris, 35, moved steadily along the dirt trail that curved beneath the Douglas firs. He stood about 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw and a neatly trimmed beard that framed a face both calm and unyielding. His dark brown hair was cut short, the kind that always made him look freshly prepared even on exhausting days. His uniform fit like a natural second skin, the navy fabric pressed and clean despite the heat. Years on the Portland Police K9 unit had carved a certain steadiness into him, a blend of discipline and gentleness, shaped partly by a past incident where he'd failed to save a missing hiker during a winter storm. That failure had settled deep in him, not as guilt but as a silent vow never to overlook a sign again. At his side strode Ranger, his 5-year-old German Shepherd partner. Ranger had a strong working dog build, deep chest, powerful hind legs, alert ears constantly swiveling. His coat was a blend of rich tan and jet black, glossy under the morning sun. Those amber eyes of his always seemed to be scanning, thinking, calculating. Ranger wasn't just loyal. He was perceptive, almost intuitive, the kind of police dog who could sense tension before it appeared and danger before it stepped forward. Together they formed a pair the precinct trusted implicitly. The task this morning was routine. A simple trail patrol through the western edge of the park, where reports of illegal campsite disturbances had surfaced. Nothing urgent. Nothing complicated. Yet Michael never treated summer patrols lightly. Heat had a way of turning ordinary days into unpredictable ones. They walked another stretch of the trail before Ranger suddenly froze mid-step. His tail stiffened. His ears rose sharply, pointed toward the deeper, untouched section of forest that veered off the official route. Michael paused. "What is it, boy?" he murmured, lowering his hand to Ranger's back. The dog's muscles vibrated beneath his palm. Then, without warning, Ranger pulled forward hard, tugging Michael off the marked trail and into an overgrown corridor of brush and ferns. Michael's boots crushed dried twigs beneath him as he followed, careful but quick. Ranger only behaved like this when he'd caught something significant: scent, sound, presence. They pushed deeper until the foliage parted into a narrow clearing bathed in slanted sunlight. And there it was, a metallic glint beneath a mound of soil and moss. Michael crouched, brushing away the dirt. His fingers met cold steel, unnaturally cold for a summer morning. The object was jagged, sharp-edged, like the broken rib of some buried beast. But the shape, the weight, this wasn't just debris. It looked like aircraft metal, old, weathered, and intentionally hidden. Ranger growled low, a rumble deep enough to vibrate the ground between them. His gaze wasn't fixed on the metal. It was fixed beyond it, toward the thicker wall of trees where sunbeams fractured in uneasy lines. Something, or someone, had been here recently. Michael leaned closer to the metal piece, noticing faint scorch patterns along its edges, the kind that suggested a violent impact. "This shouldn't be here," he muttered. Hidden debris from an old crash? Military? Criminal? None of those options belonged in Forest Park on a quiet summer morning. He reached out again, brushing off the last layer of dust, and froze when an engine roared to life somewhere beyond the trees. Not a small engine, not a hiker, a truck, a big one. Ranger barked once, sharp and urgent. Michael stiffened. Whoever had hidden this metal, whoever had walked this ground earlier, was coming back. The rumble grew louder, vibrating through the roots beneath his knees. Michael rose to his feet, tightening his grip on Ranger's harness. "Back up," he whispered. They retreated several steps, leaves crunching softly, Ranger's ears pinned forward. Then, through the wall of brush on the far side of the clearing, a black pickup truck burst into view, tires spitting dirt, grill snarling like an animal. It was headed straight toward them. Downtown Portland shimmered under the full burn of summer, sunlight bouncing off glass towers and washing the streets in a warm, almost idyllic glow. Lunch hour crowds moved lazily, enjoying the predictable comfort of a cloudless day. But Officer Emily Carter, 31, felt none of that ease as she strode across the upper level of a public parking structure. Emily stood at average height with a lean, athletic build shaped by federal training. Her dark brown hair, normally kept in a tight braid, hung partially loose today, strands brushing against a face defined by high cheekbones, steady hazel eyes, and an expression hardened by years of pursuing organized crime. Though calm and disciplined, she carried an undercurrent of barely visible tension, the kind born from growing up as the oldest daughter in a fractured household where she became the protector too early. Today, that instinct was sharper than usual. She had been tracking a weapons smuggling network for months. and every step closer to exposing the ring's leader brought new risks. At her side walked K9 Max, a 5-year-old German shepherd built slightly heavier than most, with a deep sable coat and intelligent dark amber eyes. Max radiated confidence, a working dog with powerful muscles beneath a polished coat, but also a gentleness Emily trusted more than most people. He had a habit of leaning his weight against her leg in tense moments, a silent reassurance forged through years of rescues, raids, and near misses. As they approached her patrol vehicle, Max suddenly slowed. His ears pricked sharply, nostrils flaring. Emily's pulse tightened. She followed his gaze. But before she could react, a dark van screeched around the corner. The side door exploded open, and 3 figures in tactical gear surged outward. They wore full-face visors, black gloves, and unmarked vests, uniform enough to seem official, but blank enough to hide allegiance. Emily reached for her weapon, but a 4th man, previously unseen, grabbed her from behind, locking her arms with practiced efficiency. He was tall and powerfully built, with thick, muscular forearms and a clean-shaven jaw visible beneath the lifted lower half of his visor. His eyes were a flat, unreadable gray, cold, disciplined, and utterly detached. The kind of man shaped by battlefield work he'd never been supposed to walk away from. Max lunged in fury, teeth bared, but one of the operatives jabbed a syringe into the dog's flank with frightening precision. Max staggered, legs wobbling, letting out a confused, pained whine. "No, Max!" Emily twisted, trying to protect him, but the grip around her tightened. A hood dropped over her head, fabric muffling her gasp, and she was shoved inside the van. The last thing she heard was Max's claws scraping helplessly across the pavement. Minutes blurred. Movement, heat, the smell of gasoline. Then the pressure in her ears shifted. They were airborne. The hood was yanked away. Emily blinked hard against the blast of sunlight that flooded the cabin of a civilian-modified helicopter. It wasn't police. It wasn't military. It was something much worse. Privately owned, stripped of all ID, and altered for transport that needed no paperwork. The helicopter interior was cramped and metallic, lit by harsh summer sun that streamed through open side panels. Max lay beside her, bound to the wall by a harness line, his breathing shallow from the sedative. Emily's wrists and ankles were tied with reinforced zip restraints, the plastic biting into her skin. 2 operatives stood near the door, rifles slung casually but ready. The third, the one who had restrained her, stood directly across from her. In daylight, she could see more of him. Early 40s, perhaps. Deeply tanned skin weathered by years outdoors. Thick black hair clipped short, and faint scars along his knuckles. Marks of someone who solved problems with his hands long before he learned to solve them with weapons. His presence radiated authority, but not leadership, enforcement. He was the kind of man who didn't question orders. He executed them. "You've been a thorn in the wrong side, Officer Carter," he said, voice low, gravelly. "Our employer wants the files you stole." Emily lifted her chin, hazel eyes burning. "I didn't steal anything. I did my job, and I'm not giving you a damn thing." He studied her a moment. Beneath the coldness, there was something deeper. Fatigue, maybe even regret, buried beneath duty. But it vanished quickly. "We don't need your cooperation," he replied. "Just your absence." The helicopter jolted slightly as it ascended higher into the blazing sky. Sunlight flashed across the floor plates. The side door yawned open, hot wind whipping into the cabin like a physical force. tugging at Emily's clothes, her hair, her breath. One of the operatives approached Max, checking his restraints, then turned toward her with a knife. The blade glinted under the sunlight. Emily swallowed hard. The sedated dog blinked at her weakly, and something inside her cracked. "You don't have to do this," she said, voice steady despite the fear clawing at her ribs. "Whatever you're after, we can talk." "Killing a police officer." "Not killing," the man said sharply. "Cleaning up." He sliced through the strap holding Max. The dog slipped sideways, sliding toward the open door with a soft, helpless whimper. Emily lunged instinctively, but the movement sent her straight toward the open sky, her body tipping into the blinding summer sun. And then she fell. Morning in the outskirts of Portland carried a gentler kind of summer heat, the kind that settled softly on the grass fields and drifted lazily between the tall pines. The sunlight came early and bright, stretching across the forest like warm liquid gold. Officer Michael Harris moved with careful purpose along a dirt service road, Ranger trotting close beside him. The German shepherd's gait was steady yet alert, his amber eyes scanning every shift in the landscape. They had been tracking fresh tire marks, wide, uneven, tearing through undergrowth not usually disturbed by casual hikers. Something about their direction, their depth, had unsettled Michael. It reminded him of the strange metal fragment they found the previous morning, the black pickup rushing toward them, the sense of something deliberately hidden beneath the forest's peaceful summer exterior. He had barely rested since. Now, as the sun climbed higher, Ranger stopped abruptly. His ears shot forward, tail stiff. Michael followed the dog's gaze past a row of young firs, and his breath caught. A woman lay crumpled in the tall grass, half shaded by sunlight streaming between branches. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with dirt and faint bruises. Her breathing was shallow and uneven. Next to her, shielding her with his body despite visible injury, was another German shepherd, slightly larger than Ranger, his dark sable coat marked with patches of dried blood. His left hind leg trembled with strain, yet he still lifted his head just enough to let out a low warning growl when Michael approached. Michael raised both hands, voice low and steady. "Easy. I'm here to help." Ranger stepped forward, lowering his stance in a gesture of non-threat. The injured shepherd blinked and softened slightly, still protective but no longer hostile. Only then did Michael kneel beside the woman. Up close, he could see she was in her early 30s, with a lean, athletic build and features shaped by discipline. High cheekbones, long dark lashes, and hazel eyes that would likely be sharp and assessing if they were open. Her dark brown hair, loosely tied back, was tangled from impact. The cut along her temple suggested she had struck something hard, and the dust coating her uniform told him she hadn't landed on her feet. He checked her pulse, weak but present. On her vest, half hidden beneath torn straps, was a faint federal badge. Federal officer. Everything inside Michael sharpened. This wasn't a hiker. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been here, and meant for her not to survive the fall. He scanned the sky instinctively, though only the summer sun stared back. No signs of the helicopter she must have come from, just the wind rustling the treetops. Michael moved quickly. He lifted the woman carefully, surprised by how light she felt, weight softened by unconsciousness and injury. The injured dog whimpered but did not resist. Ranger nudged the dog gently, as if promising safety. Together, man and dogs headed toward the ranger outpost cabin tucked deeper within the forest, a small wooden structure built for patrol officers during extended search operations. It wasn't meant for emergencies like this, but it was the closest thing to safety they had. Inside the cabin, sunlight streamed through the single window, warming the wooden floor. Michael laid the woman on the narrow cot and guided the injured shepherd toward the fireplace where he placed a folded blanket. The dog, Max, according to the tag on his collar, collapsed softly, breathing hard, but staying alert enough to follow Michael's movements. Ranger sat beside him, ears still shifting toward every forest sound. Michael worked quickly. He cleaned the blood on Max's leg, discovering a clean puncture, likely a syringe wound, not shrapnel. Sedative, he thought. Someone wanted him weak, not dead. He then moved to the woman, stabilizing her breathing, cleaning the cut on her forehead, and inspecting her ribs. Nothing open, but the bruising suggested internal impact. She stirred about halfway through, eyelashes fluttering before her eyes opened into a confused haze. "Ranger, Max," she whispered, attempting to rise, but pain stopped her. "You're safe," Michael said quietly. "Both of your dogs are here." She blinked several times, focusing on him for the first time. "Who?" "Michael Harris, Portland Police Department." He paused. "I found you in the field. What happened?" Her lips trembled not with fear, but with the effort of recalling something traumatic. "They threw us," she breathed, "from a helicopter. They wanted to erase us." Her voice cracked at the memory. She swallowed hard, grounding herself before continuing. "Marcus Hale, ex-military, now runs a weapons pipeline through 5 states. My task force got too close." Michael's jaw tightened. He didn't know the name personally, but he knew the type. Men who built empires on violence and survived by eliminating witnesses. Emily Carter, he could see now the name stitched on her damaged tag, had been meant to disappear quietly. Everything about this morning confirmed that the forest was no longer safe. As Emily spoke, Ranger suddenly stiffened, rising on all fours. Max followed with a soft growl, his injured leg trembling, but his instincts sharp. Michael moved to the window. Sunlight cut across the clearing outside, illuminating something that shouldn't have been there. Boot prints, deep, fresh, closing in. Then another shape shifted between the sunlit trees, a silhouette holding a rifle. Someone was coming. The cabin door burst open under Michael's shoulder just as the first bullet punched through the wooden frame behind them. Sunlight flooded the clearing like a sheet of molten gold, too bright, too serene for the violence now slipping between the trees. Emily stumbled, but regained balance quickly, one arm pressed tightly against her ribs, Max and Ranger flanking her with alert, bristling focus. Behind them, the crunch of boots on dry summer soil grew sharper, measured, tactical, relentless. Not hikers, not hunters. These were trained men moving with predatory confidence. Michael had seen this pattern before in hostile takedown operations, and every instinct in him sharpened to a razor's edge. They sprinted down the narrow slope, sunlight flickering across pine trunks as the morning heat began to rise. "Stay close," Michael said, voice low, steady. Emily nodded, jaw clenched, sweat streaking the dirt on her forehead. Despite her injuries, there was a fierce determination in her hazel eyes, a refusal to be erased. Ranger darted ahead to check the path while Max stayed tighter beside Emily, his injured leg trembling, but his posture unwavering. Then a voice barked an order behind them, deep, authoritative, unhesitant. It belonged to a broad-shouldered mercenary emerging through the trees. His name, Michael would learn later, was Cole Maddox, a man built like a granite slab with a shaved head, thick neck, and a jagged scar running from his left temple to his upper cheek. Years of private military contracts had chiseled his body into a brutal machine, and his eyes, pale blue and empty, hinted at a man who had long ago traded conscience for survival bonuses. Cole raised a compact assault rifle customized with a matte black foregrip and laser sight, the kind used by elite paramilitary teams. "Spread out," he growled to the men behind him. They obeyed instantly, fanning through the sunlight-drenched forest. Michael led the group off the road into denser brush. Dry needles crunched loudly beneath them, too loud. Ranger glanced back, ears flat, sensing the risk. Michael's breath tightened. "We're not outrunning them," Emily hissed. "No," he replied, scanning the terrain. "But we can outsmart them." He dropped to one knee beside a bent sapling. With quick, practiced movements, he wrapped a thin steel line, pulled from a hidden pouch on his duty belt, around the base and anchored it to a low stump. A simple snare trap, but effective. Max and Ranger stood guard, bodies rigid. Emily leaned against a tree, panting, sweat dripping from her chin. The bruising along her ribs had darkened, but she refused to buckle. "I'm good," she said between breaths. "Keep moving." They pressed forward. Rays of summer sun cut through the branches like glowing blades, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. For a moment, the forest felt almost peaceful again, until the metallic click of a rifle being loaded shattered the illusion. A mercenary lunged through the brush and seized Emily's arm. She gasped, twisting instinctively, but pain froze half her body. The man, lean, tall, sandy-haired beneath his helmet, had hard, pinched features and the nervous energy of someone freshly recruited into violence. Before he could drag her back, Max launched forward with a ferocious snarl, jaws clamping onto the man's forearm. The mercenary screamed, rifle dropping. Emily wrenched away just as Max shook the man violently, forcing him to the ground. Michael grabbed Emily's elbow. "Move!" They scrambled uphill, the ground shifting from packed soil to a steeper, rocky incline. Ranger barked sharply, alerting them to an opening in the trees, an elevated ridge leading toward the old emergency radio tower. "That's our shot," Michael said. "We get to the tower, send the signal, and pray someone's close." By the time they reached the ridge, the sun bore down with full intensity. Sweat soaked Michael's uniform, and Emily's breaths came ragged and shallow. Max limped but kept pace, fueled by pure will. The emergency tower, tall and skeletal, rose from the hilltop like an abandoned sentinel rusting beneath the brilliant sky. Michael sprinted to the transmitter box bolted near the base of the tower. He slammed his hand on the emergency switch. The system sputtered, lights flickering. Then a shrill beacon tone burst through the speaker, signaling distress on all local police frequencies. Relief washed through him, but only for a heartbeat. A slow clap broke the silence. They turned. From behind the tower stepped Marcus Hale. He was taller in person than Emily remembered, broad-shouldered, commanding, with neatly trimmed dark hair and a face sculpted in harsh, angular lines. His gray eyes held a calculating emptiness, the eyes of a man who once held authority and then chose power instead. He wore lightweight tactical gear that moved like fabric but protected like armor, and a half-smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Cold, confident, cruel. "You're persistent, Carter," he said, raising a matte black pistol. "I underestimated that." Emily gripped the railing beside her, fury igniting through the pain. "You tried to kill me." "Correction," Hale replied calmly. I will kill you, and your friends. The pistol leveled at Michael's chest. Ranger growled. Max staggered forward protectively. Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. A deafening explosion ruptured the air, swallowing the summer heat in a single blinding flash. The explosion rolled across the hilltop like a thunderclap, tearing through the brilliant summer sky. But Michael realized instantly it hadn't come from Hale's pistol. The blast had erupted from above, a concussive burst of air followed by the unmistakable roar of rotor blades slicing through sunlight. A Portland police helicopter, white and blue, the department's emblem gleaming along its side, burst over the ridge, its searchlight blazing down in a spear of brilliant gold. The beam hit the clearing with such intensity that the dry pine needles shimmered, lighting the scene as though the sun itself had descended. Hale staggered back, momentarily blinded, his angular face twisting with fury as he shielded his eyes. The man who prided himself on controlling every variable now faced the one force he could not manipulate: witnesses. The mercenaries scattered instinctively. These were hardened men, but surprise shattered their formation. One dove behind a fallen log. Another sprinted toward the lower trail, slipping on loose gravel. The third, Cole Maddox, raised his rifle on instinct, but the helicopter's loudspeaker boomed with the full authority of law. "Drop your weapons! Hands in the air!" The voice belonged to Lieutenant Sarah Monroe, the helicopter's tactical operator. Sarah was in her early 40s, tall and sharp-featured, with tightly braided blonde hair and a sun-browned complexion earned from years spent flying search and rescue missions. A faded scar traced her jawline, a souvenir from a nighttime mountain evacuation gone wrong. But her eyes, a keen storm gray, held focus as steady as steel. She was a no-nonsense officer known for a calm that never cracked, not even under fire. Beneath her, the rescue team prepared to rappel. Michael seized the moment. With the helicopter's downdraft whipping dust around them, he lunged toward Emily, pulling her behind the radio tower support beam. "You good?" he asked quickly. She nodded, breath ragged but eyes fierce. "We end this, now!" Ranger moved in front of them, muscles coiled, while Max limped to Emily's other side, teeth bared. Despite the pain radiating through his injured leg, Max's posture was unwavering, protective, resolute, a veteran K-9 refusing to sit out the final battle. Hale recovered his bearings, dropping into a low stance. His expression hardened into a cold, calculated mask as he assessed the changing battlefield. "You can't win," he spat. "Back up or not, none of you walk away with what you know." Emily stepped into view, gripping the fallen mercenary's pistol with both hands. Though sweat streaked across her forehead and her ribs throbbed, she stood like a soldier, remembering the oath that shaped her life. "The truth walks away today," she said. "You don't." Hale fired first. The shot ricocheted off the tower's steel frame with a violent crack. Michael ducked and returned fire, forcing Hale back toward a jagged outcropping of rock. Ranger charged, drawing the attention of one of the retreating mercenaries. As the man raised his weapon, Ranger leapt, knocking him flat before the gun could discharge. The mercenary groaned, pinned beneath 100 pounds of trained precision. On the opposite side, Max threw himself into a second mercenary who had tried to flank Emily. Though injured, Max's timing was surgical. He struck the man's wrist, sending his rifle spinning across the dirt. The helicopter crew touched down 2 officers at the ridge, both in full tactical gear. One, Officer Daniel Ruiz, a sturdy man in his 30s with close-cropped black hair and a trimmed beard, took one look at the scene and charged forward. Daniel was known throughout the department as fearless to the point of reckless, shaped by a childhood growing up in East LA, where he lost his older brother to gang violence. His vow to protect everyone I still can drove him in every mission. He engaged Cole Maddox in a swift takedown, ducking a blow and slamming the larger man into the hillside with controlled force. Cole hit the ground, stunned. Now only Hale remained. The fallen mastermind, breathing heavily, sweat and dust streaking his once pristine tactical suit, retreated step by step until his back met the jagged cliff rock. The sun blazed behind him, outlining him like a stark silhouette. Emily stepped forward slowly, never lowering her weapon. Michael mirrored her movement, Ranger at his side, Max remaining a protective shadow behind her. Hale swung his gun toward Michael. But Emily fired first. Her bullet struck the rock beside Hale's hand, forcing him to drop the weapon as pain jolted through his arm. Before he could recover, Ranger lunged, grabbing his forearm and wrenching him down. Hale crashed onto the dirt, pinned and helpless, fury twisting his angular face as officers swarmed in to cuff him. And just like that, under the blazing summer sun, the deadly chase ended. The weapons network Hale had built for years was officially over. The helicopter shut down its searchlight, leaving only natural sunlight washing across the ridge. Warm, bright, alive. Emily knelt beside Ranger and Max, running her hands through their fur. Her voice shook with gratitude she couldn't hide. "You saved me," she whispered to both dogs, then looked up at Michael. "All of you did." Michael exhaled, a long, quiet breath that seemed to release years he didn't realize he'd been carrying. "Feels like I finally made something right," he said softly. As officers secured the site and prepared for extraction, the three, Michael, Emily, Ranger, and Max, stood together on the ridge, sun painting them in gold. Three broken paths, colliding by fate, now stitched into something whole under the summer sky. It was a beginning none of them had expected, but all silently accepted. And it was good. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or light splitting the sky. Sometimes they come quietly, in the form of a police officer who refuses to give up, a wounded K-9 who keeps fighting even when his body says he can't, or two strangers whose paths collide at the exact moment God intends. What happened on that blazing summer ridge wasn't just courage. It wasn't just training. It wasn't even luck. It was a reminder that God places the right people in the right place at the right time, especially when the world thinks there's no way out. And if he can do that for Michael, Emily, Ranger, and Max, he can do it for you too. In our daily lives, on the days that feel heavy, lonely, or uncertain, God sends help in unexpected forms. A friend who calls at the perfect moment, a stranger who shows kindness without knowing your burden, a spark of courage when you thought you had none left. These quiet miracles are real, and they are happening every day. So if you're watching this now, may this story remind you. You are not walking your path alone. God is beside you, guiding, protecting, and lifting you, even when you don't see it yet. Before you go, we invite you to share this story with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe to our channel so these stories of faith, courage, and second chances can reach even more hearts across the world. And may God bless you, your family, and every loyal companion who walks beside you. Amen.